short roundup videos are continuing on, this time going on to Nintendo. The conference overall is, well, Nintendo at E3 is losing less and less, is always having less and less relevance slowly as time goes on, because Nintendo do the Nintendo Direct streams very often now. It's gotten to a point where they're sort of showing off at E3 is almost at this point obligatory. They don't have to do it. A lot of the announcements they do, and a lot of the sort of other announcements they had, or a lot of the continuation of announcements they had, were announcements that were already around from the Nintendo Direct streams. So there's not really that much to talk about with them, but that's more because they don't have to do E3. But there was one very interesting part of their stream that I thought was very interesting, was having Reggie Fils-Aimé, the head of Nintendo of America, having him talk about basically having words on competition and battle and sort of going against each other and winning and losing. Because there was a moment he was talking about esports and talking about this is about telling stories, not about winning or losing or anything like that. And I think part of the reason for saying things like that is because there is the undertone that the Wii U was a giant pile of shit, and no one bought it, and it was terrible for the company, and it was extremely financially bad for the company. But the Switch has now found its legs, found its footing. Even during E3, it found even more of its footing, with stuff that's going to be coming out probably the next couple of years. Although the one thing to say about the actual stream was the end. They just ended. It just went and finished and Treehouse. It just basically just someone pressed a button and it switched streams. As for the games themselves, they first started off with the Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Not much to say on that. It's Xenoblade Chronicles. They had a whole big through the Treehouse. They had a very long sort of gameplay trailer. I think they were saying that there's 40 minutes of gameplay out there, but it's a proper JRPG coming out for the Switch. So it's a very JRPG. If you're interested in the JRPG things, they are very in depth. So yeah, it's one for the JRPG fans out there who were interested. Then came Kirby, which we've got going by the press release. It is Kirby for the Nintendo Switch, which is a working title. It's basically this game is basically the only thing they said. There's a lot of the games that they just showed a picture for or just announced going, these are the games we are going to do. Because there's another one, Metroid Prime 4, which was again Metroid Prime 4 working title, which had Reggie saying in a couple of interviews saying that they announced them at such an early stage just to make sure that fans and people knew that are going, yes, we do care about Metroid. We are making a Metroid game. And yes, we are actually making a Kirby game. He's like, relax, we actually are making this shit. Because I think after things like, what was it? Formation Force? Federation Force? Whatever the thing, the Metroid Federation Force thing that came out last time for the DS. People were pissed that there wasn't as like, oh, but what about a proper Samus game? And this is basically them going, no, we actually are making another proper Samus game. We actually are making a Metroid Prime game. Chill the fuck out. Well, probably another example of that is that they brought on Pokemon, the head of the Pokemon company, to come on, basically to announce or to finish off announcing, because they'd been talking about this on the direct streams, which is the Pokemon Tournament DX, which is just the Pokemon Tournament for Switch. Which has got more characters, extra bonus things, which is coming out on September 22nd. And that was also the time where they announced a proper Pokemon game, a proper Pokemon RPG for the Switch. Again, it was basically just them going, we're making a Pokemon game for the Switch, chill the fuck out. Yeah, then they went on to Yoshi's Island. Again, working title, chill the fuck out. Then came Fire Emblems, which is a Fire Emblems game, which is coming out for Switch and DS. It's coming out in the autumn. Well, the Nintendo Switch version is coming out in the autumn. The 3DS version, don't know. Didn't say anything, and it didn't really have anything. This is 2017 or something, so it's very much as before, and as with all Switch stuff, it has amiibo things with it as well, so you can have amiibo things for it. Then came Zelda, the Zelda DLC, which is interesting, because they announced the current DLC, which is coming out in the summer, which I think is out now, which you can buy as a double pack for if you don't have the Zelda core game. It's basically just a master. It's basically the hard part of the game, because they're bringing in a hard mode, a hero's path mode, where it tracks where you've walked for the last 200 hours, and it even backtracks it as well. So even if you just got the DLC and you've already played 200 hours, then it will already track where you've been. It's basically just to make sure that it's a way to track of where you've been and how much where you've explored, because it's an open world thing. It's very good to have that sort of thing. And then they had things like the Korok mask and other bits of gear and other things, costumes. You could play as Tingle, have a costume as Tingle. It's that. Not much else to really say about that. It's DLC. The first one is going to be just hard mode DLC, hard things. There's a challenge mode as well, the challenge rooms, the 45-room challenge rooms, which you can start, and you start with nothing, and then become all-powerful, and your reward is to become all-powerful, because you basically just have the Master Sword full power all of the time. But then they also announced that there is going to be the champion Bard, Champion Bold, which is coming out in the holidays. It's coming out around Christmas for the next set of DLC. Probably going to be wintry DLC or something along those lines, some Christmassy things as well. And then they had a whole big thing with Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. If you saw the video on Ubisoft made a whole big deal about the thing, actually bringing on Miyamoto on stage right at the very beginning. So there's not really that much else to add. Comes out on August 29th. For the Switch. It's a sort of conjunction thing with them and Ubisoft. Yves Guillemot ended up coming onto the stream, or had a bit for the stream talking about it this time. So it's Ubisoft borrowed Miyamoto and Nintendo borrowed Yves. And then they had a whole thing about Rocket League. Rocket League Switch Edition is coming. There's some special stuff that is coming to the Switch as well. Some exclusive things, like Mario things and stuff. It's Nintendo's usual thing of, we're having a version for the Switch, and we have special things as well to entice you to come across. It's basically just Rocket League coming to the Switch, so, yeah. And then came the shining light of the whole stream, which was Super Mario Odyssey, coming out on the 27th. Coming out on the 27th of October. It's kind of interesting it's coming so close to Halloween, considering the first thing everyone said was Mario is possessing people. But it was the Nintendo Twitter had a response to that saying it's capturing, not possessing. Capturing, having the whole, oh look, you're capping them. It's basically every single person is going, oh yes, Mario has been everything else, and now he's just a body snatcher. It seems bonkers. It seems bloody amazing. The vibe that I always had from it was the fact that because it's Mario in the real world, or going around real sort of properly designed characters and things, sort of that has a realistic design, always ended up making me feel like Sonic 06, which was weird, because Sonic 06 is very terrible. But they spent a lot of time talking about it. They demoed it a lot during the Treehouse. They showed off a co-op mode, which seems to be someone takes over Mario and someone takes over the hat. And you end up like hovering over the hat or something like that. I don't know. The video that they actually had on the press release was which I think may have been the wrong one. May have been one of the wrong clip things. But if it might be the whole thing of someone controls Mario and someone controls the hat, and the hat goes whee and sort of flies off and uses a projectile or something. I don't know. Overall, the Super Mario Odyssey just seems like a 3D Mario game thing. It seems like another 3D Mario thing, but it's an open world one where you can actually sort of wander around and actually you actually have an open world Mario sort of platformer thing rather than having to go level to level to level as per the Super Mario design. Then there's the press releases we got about stuff that wasn't on the actual wasn't on the stream. One of them being Ever Oasis for the DS, for the DS's now, as it really fucking called. There's so bleeding many of them. Which is a JRPG from the creator of the Mana series, saga stuff, from the Mana games. Yeah, it's a 3DS JRPG. It seems very fun, very JRPG. I think they're very much cementing their way of getting JRPGs these days, which is quite good, more than anything else. Then came some talk about Hey Pikmin, which is coming out on the 20th of July for the 3DS. Yeah, the first thing people start saying is that if you are a fan of like the original Pikmin games and things like that, this is not a Pikmin game. Probably the best example that I have is that this is kind of like the old Lemmings games, where you control Olimar going across sort of leading people through puzzles and things like that. So yeah, it's kind of like the Lemmings games. It's not a normal Pikmin game. Then there was a release for Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, which is coming to the 3DS on October 6th. It's a game that was on the Game Boy Advance. This is a re-release of a game for the modern stuff. But it is also coming with a bonus game. It's basically a second game to it called Bowser's Minions, which is kind of like a side story to the entire thing, following Bowser's minions trying to rescue Bowser. So it's it's quite interesting. It's a re-release of a GBA game. It's a Mario and Luigi game, so it has that style of combat to it as well. But it's coming with a bonus game as well, giving some incentive for people who want to get sort of the retelling of the game itself. Then there was talk about Miitopia getting a Western release on July 28th. Miitopia is a very weird beast. It's kind of like the way that I described it is it's a Tomodachi RPG, because it's an RPG with your Miis, where you have someone who is stealing faces, and they stole the face of your Miis, and you must go and rescue them. It's really the best way to explain it. It's a Tomodachi RPG where you have kind of control over it, but it's also dependent on how your characters interact and what you get the characters to do to create sort of the relationships and the friendships through it. So, yeah, it's a rather interesting piece. If you like games like Tomodachi Life and things like that, this is probably going to be one for it. Then there is Sushi Striker: The Way of Sushido, which it's this one. This is another one of the Japan games, because it's basically it's a game around eating sushi. You are a competitive eater. You eat sushi, but then it's like through a matching game thing. But then you fling plates to an enemy to fight an enemy. And so you match types of sushi, which is essentially the colours, and then you use the colours to fling at an enemy, and then it's kind of a puzzle game, but it's also a puzzle combat game using sushi. It's like I said, Japan. And then there's Metroid: Shamus Returns, which is just a reimagining of Metroid 2. It's just a retelling of Metroid 2. Coming around with all the amiibo specials, an update to it as well. Kind of like the Superstar Saga. It's just a re-release of Metroid 2. That's going to be coming out. That was announced during through the direct streams as well. So it's not going to be that much of new news, really, I think. Generally, not that much to talk about. It's, like I said, a lot of the stuff that they have is talked about in Nintendo Direct streams, so there's not really that much to talk about. Nintendo is one of the companies that has very close-knit network of people and the ways of getting the messages out and things. So, not really that much to talk about here. So it's that's pretty much it for that's pretty much it for Nintendo.